Your new life will cost you your old one. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Well Path Podcast. I am your host, Brooke Robbins. I am so excited to share this episode with you today. The topic that I want to dive into today is going to be about letting things fall away, allowing for seasons of your life that are coming to a natural close to close. And I know that oftentimes many of us have a lot of resistance to change. And that's the main thing that I want to dive into in this episode today. We are in, astrologically speaking, a very interesting time period of shedding right now. We're going to get into that. And I think a lot of us collectively are experiencing, to various degrees, a shedding and cleansing and releasing of old identities, old relationships, outdated roles. And while that is super exciting because it's ultimately making way for something new and something better, even when the thing that's coming up is better than the thing that you're in now, letting go of good for better is incredibly challenging. And letting go of things that have been meaningful to us is really hard. There is no way around it. And funnily enough, I had been thinking about this topic over the last, I would say, month or so, because as I mentioned, I feel like a lot of us collectively are going through this in various degrees, myself included. And I have this like intelligent change deck. If you're watching on videos, you can see it. It's like I usually every morning will just like pull a random card out of the deck. And it just so happened that this morning, the card that I pulled says, I let go of all resistance to change. And truly, surrendering to the flow of life and the ability to do that, the ability to recognize that resistance is always a sign of misalignment, and to recognize that change, while scary, is necessary to step into a bigger version of your life, a better version of yourself. It's a superpower. Doesn't mean that it's easy. So I want to talk a little bit about the energetics of this today, and then some practical advice and ways of thinking that might help anyone who might be going through some sort of period of release, of shedding, of letting go, to embrace that and really prepare yourself for the Chinese New Year, right? The new kind of astrological year as we're moving into this fire horse energy. So, really quick kind of recap on that for anyone that's not already familiar with the energetics of this. I'm going to read a couple of things about sort of what I'm talking about astrologically, just to sort of set the stage here. So the year of the wood snake was like 2024 through early 2025. The actual date that the year is changing is February 17th. So we are approaching the final finale of the shedding. And the year of the wood snake, which is wrapping up, was all about shedding without spectacle. Okay. So growth that happens quietly, that happens internally, often unseen by others. It's about releasing outdated identities and outdated roles. This could be relationships, it could be habits, it could be belief systems. On a collective level, it could be institutions. It's also characterized by sort of inward and reflective energy. I don't know if anyone else relates to this, but I have been so called to isolation over the last couple of months. And I'm somebody who naturally is very extroverted. And more so than definitely usual, maybe ever, I feel like I have been craving alone time and solitude over the last couple of months. And I feel like that is just an energy that's kind of in the air. And that's always purposeful. Whenever you're feeling that way, I always tell people to just listen to that, because usually when you're being called to solitude, when you're being called to isolation, there's a reason. There's some sort of message or download that is meant to come through, something you're meant to create. There is a reason why you're being asked to go inward a little bit more in this season. The year of the wood snake is also a lot about foundation setting. So you can think of it as like a clearing of things that are not actually able to come with you into this next season of momentum. Anything that isn't really able to kind of keep up or is no longer in alignment is going to get cleared out. This isn't about forcing things out. It's actually about the opposite of force. It's about letting go of our grip on things so that the things that stay are the things that want to stay. And anything that is naturally trying to fall away just falls away and makes space for something new. The year of the fire horse, which again is beginning this month, is about momentum, expression, and expansion. And if you read the first newsletter of the year, you would have read my sort of theme words for 2025 and 2026 respectively were reinvention and expansion. And this is very in line with sort of the astrological themes of shedding old things that are no longer relevant, and then moving into this phase of forward motion. So things are going to start moving super, super quickly. Also, visibility and expression is a big theme for this year coming up. So it is definitely going to be a year of being seen, being heard, being known. And again, while the snake energy was a lot about sort of reflection and isolation and deep thought, the year of the horse is about action and momentum. And that is the season that we are moving into. The snake year is clearing what can't sustain the speed to come. And this is a perfect segue into the topic, because what I really want to talk about is no matter how many seasons of change and reinvention we go through in our lives, and some of you listening may have been through these periods before, where maybe you've moved cities, ended a long-term relationship, changed friend groups, maybe your whole life has changed once or a couple of times even. Every time we do that, we get a little bit more used to it and a little bit more comfortable with it, but it never doesn't feel uncomfortable, right? Letting go of anything that has become associated with comfort and has become routine or habitual for you is going to be hard. And oftentimes, I feel like subconsciously, when something ends, again, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, a career chapter of your life, it can feel like a failure just because it didn't last forever. But we really have to challenge that thought and remind ourselves that just because something doesn't last forever doesn't mean it wasn't valuable, doesn't mean it wasn't a blessing, doesn't mean it wasn't meant for you, right? Things can be meant for you in a season, and you can genuinely hold so much love and gratitude for that person, that thing, that opportunity, while also recognizing that it isn't meant to come with you. And I think that sometimes we get into this black and white thinking where, first of all, we feel like in order to leave a chapter, we have to sort of villainize it. And I think that happens a lot with relationships, but honestly also with, moving cities or changing jobs. Like, we'll have this tendency to kind of subconsciously or consciously, maybe even verbally, villainize the thing that isn't coming with us, right? And what I want to position in this episode is that that's actually not necessary, and can actually be very counterproductive. In fact, it's really powerful to recognize all of the blessings that whatever this chapter of your life, this season of your life did bring to you, while also recognizing that anything that is meant for you will not require you to cling to it. And so if something is naturally falling away, allowing that to just be the case and thanking it for its service and for its time and for the value that is provided to your life during the season of time. Your new life will cost you your old one is one of my favorite things to remind myself of, because a lot of the times we get really wrapped up and excited in, envisioning these new versions of ourselves where maybe the reality, the dream life, when you think about your 5-year plan, right? Your dream, when you do your higher self visualizations and you think about like your best version of your life, like maybe a lot of things about you and about your life are different. And so it's like, obviously, we have to think about this consciously, that if you're asking for a new reality, that is going to cost you your current reality. And there are just things and people and situations and opportunities and whatever and habits and routines that are not going to be able to come with you. That doesn't make any of those people or any of those things wrong. It doesn't make them a villain. It doesn't change the fact that they were a blessing for you in the season of your life. Some people come into our life as teachers. Some people come into our life as mirrors to reflect something back from within ourselves and to show us something that we still need to kind of work on. Some people come in as sort of bridges and expanders to show us what's sort of possible for us and start to expand our understanding and our belief systems around what is possible for us. And some people are just, again, here for a season. It doesn't mean that they weren't a blessing. They were still a blessing. Everything that comes into your life comes into your life in perfect divine timing for a reason. So bless everything and everyone that has played a role in where you are now and where you're going. And this kind of goes into the concept of gratitude without attachment. Okay. You can have gratitude without attaching and clinging to something needing to stay exactly the same. You can thank people and thank things and thank opportunities for the role they played in your growth, for the role they played in your life, for the joy they brought you in that time. But release the expectation that they come with you. Now, again, this is a lot easier said than done. It is really hard when you start to feel relationships shifting, maybe a dynamic that you had with somebody, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, even like a work relationship. Maybe there was some sort of relationship in your life that felt super aligned and super easy and super in flow. And suddenly it sort of feels like the energy of it is different. and it doesn't really feel that way anymore. And it feels like it's not really working and you can't really put your finger on it. It is really tempting to do one of two things: double down and cling to the person, or double down and cling to the thing and chase and chase and chase and try to force the thing to stay with you, or villainize the thing. Neither of these things are necessary. You can simply exist in a space where you observe and you recognize the shifting dynamic. You don't ignore it, hoping that it goes away. You observe it, you name it, you recognize it to yourself, and you accept it. And again, you just ultimately allow things that are naturally falling away to fall away with love and with gratitude. And you can even thank those people or those things or whatever for the role that they have played in your life up until now, and genuinely send love and positive energy to them, but allow them to fall away. You don't need a villain to justify an ending. I want to be so clear on that. And on that note, I want to say that one really important signal to look out for is anything or anyone that puts you in a chasing energy. Okay. I can't say this enough. The right people will want to be around you. This goes for relationships. This goes for friendships. This goes for business context. Okay. The right people are going to want you around. You are not going to have to beg and plead and chase and force and be the only person calling somebody up and texting somebody all the time to initiate everything. It's not going to happen. The right people are going to meet you there. They're going to want you there. Okay. So friends, partners, collaborators shouldn't require like convincing, shrinking, performing, shape-shifting to get into the room. Okay. When I think about chasing energy often looks like being the only one to ever initiate anything. Over explaining yourself is a big one. It can also manifest as just like a generalized feeling of anxiety and feeling kind of off balance inside of a dynamic. There's this energetic dissonance that happens. And I want you, if you're listening to this episode, to just take a second to reflect and think for a moment if there are any dynamics in your life right now that you feel like are putting you in a chasing energy, that you feel like anxious around and you kind of sense them slipping away and the temptation is to kind of double down. And I want you to pause and just observe that. And maybe just ask yourself this question, like, what if I stopped chasing? What if I just leaned back and didn't pull away, but just stopped chasing, right? Maybe that person will then come to meet you, right? Maybe that thing will then come to meet you and the balance is restored. But maybe that doesn't happen and that's okay too. And that is just a way of the universe showing to you that this thing is no longer meant to be in your life, and that's perfectly fine. If something is meant for you, it will not require you to drag it along, to cling to it. It will feel in flow. So why is this so hard to do? It sounds kind of simple, right? Even when you know that better is on the horizon, why is it so hard to let go of good? Okay. It's really hard to leave what is familiar. As human beings, like our psychology is built to feel comfortable with what is familiar to us already. In general, most people have a level of discomfort with uncertainty. We are always kind of in this sort of juxtaposition of wanting certainty, but also uncertainty is what creates sort of like zest in our lives. And so it's like subconsciously and kind of on a subconscious level, we actually need uncertainty in our lives to feel alive and to feel like life is interesting and worth living, right? If you think of like if you knew exactly, if you actually came onto earth knowing the entire movie of your life, knowing everything that was going to happen, life wouldn't be worth living, right? So it's like we kind of can understand that we actually need the uncertainty, but on like a nervous system level, uncertainty feels destabilizing. We don't feel like we like that. And on top of that, a lot of us end up creating these attachments around versions of our identity, right? So there might be an attachment around who you were inside of that relationship, who you were in that job, who you got to be in that environment. The version of you that existed in this context is a piece of your identity that you probably have some level of attachment to. And on top of that, you may be grieving an imaginary future of what could have been. You might be grieving a version of your life that you expected to come to fruition that you are realizing is just like never going to happen. You can know that something is misaligned and still feel heartbroken about it. And it doesn't mean that you're going backwards and it doesn't mean that you're moving in the wrong direction. It's part of the human experience. Another interesting point that I wanted to just bring up here is so I recently started listening on audiobook to this book called Reality Transurfing. Maybe some of you listening will have heard of it. I feel like, at least in my echo chamber algorithm, it's kind of been everywhere. Like a lot of my friends are reading it. The book itself is like 700 pages. It's like a monolithic, massive book. But it popped up on my Spotify. Coincidence? I think not. It popped up on my Spotify and it's like available on Spotify Premium to listen as an audiobook. So that's what I've been listening to most of the time when I'm in the car. And it's super, super interesting. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But one of the chapters that I was listening to this past week, one of the topics that came up was about resistance as information. And it was actually about sort of signs and the concept of like seeing signs and synchronicities and things in your life. And then it talked about intuition as ultimately the most important sign is just like how your gut is responding to something. How your body responds to something holds so much information because here's the thing. We have been taught and conditioned to make decisions exclusively from logic and from our minds and our brains. And while logic has a role to play, obviously, in our lives, it isn't the be all end all. And also, our logical minds, just by definition, have access to less information. Okay. Our intuitions are tapped into something so much greater than us. They are tapped into knowledge and information that our logical minds have no business knowing. And that's the beautiful mystery of intuition, right? You just know things without knowing why you know them, but you just know them. And that's because there is a larger divine collective source of information that your intuition is downloading things from. And when your body reacts to something with any of the following: hesitation, resistance, stuck energy, heaviness, that like internal, oof, like I'm feeling a bit resistant to that. Like you can kind of, I don't know if this relates to anybody, but for me, it's like when my gut is kind of like on the fence about something, even if logically it makes sense, it's like this visceral kind of like leaning back energy or this sort of like hesitation energy. And whenever you feel that, that is really important information. Again, the logical mind may be trying to overwrite and override what your intuition is telling you by listing all of the reasons why this thing or this person or whatever is a good idea, but your gut understands alignment in a way that your mind can never justify. Okay. And when something requires constant convincing, especially when you start to hear your own mind, that inner voice inside of your brain trying to convince yourself into something, that is a really good sign that it's actually a no. The body will always tighten around something that is not actually meant to continue. And there's an important difference here between fear-based resistance, which I'll go into briefly, fear-based resistance and misalignment-based resistance, because sometimes we feel hesitant towards something because we're afraid, even though it really is right for us. That's a very different feeling of resistance than the type of resistance that is misalignment. And the best way that I can articulate that, and hopefully all of you have experienced this, so this will kind of make sense, is fear-based resistance is the underlying feeling behind it is still that your body is gravitating towards the thing. So there's this underlying level of like excitement about the thing, even if there's a layer of fear and maybe like a little bit of doubt and a little bit of self-doubt about it. It's still like the underlying feeling about the thing itself is a movement towards. Whereas misalignment-based resistance is like your body moving away from the thing. It can be super, super subtle, but when you start to tune in and you start to get really connected in this way, it becomes really, really obvious. And so long story short is that especially in this season, as we are closing out this shedding season, start to pay really close attention to anything that is presenting as resistance, as hesitation, as oof, okay? This may be pointing you towards something that is not supposed to come with you. And the good news is letting go of these things does not require, some big confrontation, some, big upheaval. Most of the time, these things are already trying to exit stage left, okay? So all you literally need to do is stop clinging on to them. That might look like stop reaching out, okay? If there's somebody in your life that like you're the only one ever trying to like bridge connection, make plans, call, whatever, stop. Just stop and see what happens. If there's a work opportunity that's like you just keep like facing resistance, like you're trying to make it work, it's just like it isn't working, just stop, pivot, go in a different direction. it's actually not about creating this big dramatic upheaval. It's actually the opposite. It's letting go and allowing yourself to flow with the flowing sea, the flowing tides of life, and experiment with that and see what happens. Because oftentimes, as soon as we let go of good, better arrives. But that requires that level of faith and understanding that the right things will and ultimately come through this feeling of flow and ease, in a sense, and alignment. So a couple of questions to consider as we close out this season are, is there anything that you're still carrying out of habit or out of comfort? Is there anything, again, relationships, opportunities, habits, routines, that is asking to be released, that you can feel yourself tightening around, clinging around? If so, can you experiment with letting go and see what happens? You do not need to burn bridges. You don't need closure from anybody. You don't need permission from anybody to evolve and to grow and to change. So I invite everybody this week to focus on letting go of all resistance to change, like this little card that I pulled this morning, and see what peacefully exits from your life and see what peacefully enters into your life, because chances are both things are going to happen. Embrace the change, because your new life will cost you your old one, but it's going to be so much better and brighter and more aligned and more fulfilling and more vibrant than anything you can ever imagine. Lastly, if you are navigating a period of transition, if relationships are shifting, if you feel yourself standing in the gap between this version of yourself and who you are becoming, I would love to chat with you. I have a couple of spots left for February for one-on-one coaching. You can book a free clarity call with me through the link in my Instagram bio. I'll also put it in the show notes here. I would love to chat with you guys. If you're not following us on Instagram, connect with us there as well at the.well.path. I love hearing feedback and questions from you guys. So if you had any thoughts, if you have any experiences that are happening that felt resonant for you, I'd love to hear about them. Please DM me. My DMs are always open. And if you have any thoughts or questions or topics that you want covered in future episodes, please let me know. But most importantly, spend this week observing what is trying to fall away and practice surrendering and letting go to the flow, and see all of the miracles and beauty that can come from that. Have an amazing week, and I will see you on Monday.